listening to the 40 Thrive Podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Welcome to another episode of 40 Thrive. I am so grateful you're here. Quick congratulations to Mary Jane, who won the entire Kindra product suite. Lots of estrogen-free products to help with mood swings, hot flashes, sleep issues, vaginal dryness, all those fun symptoms that can show up in perimenopause and menopause. She entered to win through our free and private Facebook group. Now, you may not have won. That's okay, but you can still get 20% off Kindra's products site-wide. Head on over to ourkindra.com and use promo code 40thrive20 or just click the link here in the show notes. Don't forget promo code 40thrive20. So F-O-R-T-Y, Thrive, and the number 20. Okay, so if you haven't been in our free and private Facebook group in a while, run, don't walk. This week is our 40 Thrive gift guide and giveaway. It is so good. Thousands in products and services from some of our incredible 40 Thrive podcast guests. I'm talking one-on-one sessions with Diane Wingert, who's a therapist turned life coach, and Courtney Townley, who will help you make your health the number one priority of 2021. You could work with career expert Amber Beam. You can take a feng shui course with the amazing Patricia Lohan. There's weight loss, human design, tools to ask for what you want. It is jam-packed. All of these gifts have been provided by our 40 Thrive podcast guests. The link to the community is right here in the show notes. Enter to win today and start living the life you deserve in early 2021. Alrighty, so I could spend the next hour just talking about all the things Dr. Michele Cooley-Strickland has done. Head over to the show notes to read that. I'm going to try to sum it up with the Cliff's Notes version. So let's see if I can do it. Dr. Michele Cooley is an award-winning licensed psychologist, a professor, a researcher, a podcast co-host. It's a lot. I was on her podcast, She Built It, earlier this year. I'll link to that in the show notes. But she's appeared on Extra, Oprah, Today Show, CNN, and The Early Show, among others. Her private practice specializes in helping women build life skills that empower them to be their best selves. Who doesn't want that, right? One of the reasons I wanted to talk to Dr. Michele is because not only is she brilliant at what she does, she's actually quite masterful at adding and subtracting things to her life when she wants more or less of something. How many of us have full-time jobs or businesses or other things that we keep doing because that's how we set up our lives? Dr. Michele could easily just run her private practice or just do her UCLA research or teach or podcast. But what's so incredible about this time in our lives is that we can create our own formula that's made up of all different types of experiences. Just because you started down one path does not mean you always have to stay on it. Or maybe you want a couple paths. That's cool too. It is your life. This time right now, especially in 2020 when everything is up in the air, is a great time to try out some things and maybe diversify what you're doing to pay the bills. Start a side hustle or cut back on the things that deplete you. Only you really know what would be best for you. But I hope this episode will inspire you to reflect on how far you've come and get really honest with yourself when you think about what the future would look like if you tried a couple new things. I got to tell you right now, if you don't yell, hell yeah, at least a dozen times during this interview, well, I just don't believe you. Dr. Michele is phenomenal. All right, are you ready? Let's talk to the multifaceted, multi-talented, and multi-passionate Dr. Michele Cooley-Strickland. Dr. Michele, welcome to 40 Thrive.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm so thrilled to be with you. It's great being on your podcast, admitting and celebrating the fact that we are over 40.
Right.
And,
some of us super close to 50.
Okay. With that comes wisdom and the ability to adjust.
Yes.
Because we've surmounted so many hurdles. If you take a moment and reflect and look back, look at all the hurdles you've jumped. And you might not have wanted to cross that hurdle, but once you land on the other side of it, you're like, whoa, look what I did. Even if I didn't want to do it, I did it. And I thrived as a result. So when you say, look at all the things that you're doing and have done, it is a culmination of all of that.
There are so many people out there that I speak to on a regular basis who feel like, well, I took this path. I wanted to be a therapist. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be whatever it is. Insert what it is you want here. But then you realize when you start to do it that it's not necessarily all you want. But there are so many people, and maybe you see this. I am no therapist, but people who feel like they have to stay on the same path because that's what they envisioned for themselves, even when that particular path makes them miserable. How did you do it?
We can be comfortable with anything, but we also can adjust to anything. And it is the recognition that we have the power to change. And it is the acceptance of being willing to fail in the way that we, and I have air quotes for your listeners, to fail, end quotes, in what we sought to do. But we will always succeed in landing where we should be. And you start off thinking that I decided I wanted to be a nail technician. Okay, great. I'm a nail technician. I'm doing this. Okay, this is going on and on. This is my 5th year. This is my 7th year. I'm stuck. I have listened to all these stories because as I'm filing nails and doing cuticles, I'm hearing all these stories, these themes of people's lives that have inspired me, and I want to become blank. Well, I believe in the power of education. If you don't know, somebody knows. There's a teacher, there's a class, there's a degree. Keep being that nail technician by day, and then by night, you are doing your community college course. You are writing and exploring and interviewing people how to become that next blah. So if you are a low risk taker, then stay in your safety zone, which is that nail technician by day. Don't give up your day job, but use every waking moment outside of that day job to build to the next blank that you want to be. Right. And the thing is, we live so long, and for our listeners who are in their 40s plus, say you're 50, you still have a good, solid 30 years plus, because that's conservative 80, to still live. So if you're not doing what you're passionate about, what you're thrilled about, you still have 30 years to keep doing what you're not passionate about or you're not thrilled about. Or behind door B is the option to just do it anyway. Do something different with your life. And if you need reminders or inspiration or the how-tos or to learn from authentic people who have not 9 times out of 10 had a linear trajectory towards quote unquote success, it's a jagged pathway that I did this and then I pivoted to that and then I pivoted to this and then I pivoted to that. And then voila, here I am. Right?
Overnight success.
As Hollywood loves to portray. I mean, it's the same thing as love at first sight, or they met and got married and Cinderella, they fell in love and lived happily ever after. No, there's a whole lot between what you believe people experience to what actual success is. Right. It's very jagged, and it's okay that you're not traditional. In fact, you're probably better if you're not traditional in your pathway.
Right. I think that everything that you have done, every conversation you've had, every experience leads you to where you need to be, in my opinion. And so yes. I see all the time women who are talking about reinvention, right? We talk about reinventing yourself in midlife. I call bullshit on reinvention because that gives us the idea that we need to start from scratch, that we're like starting over. And it's really not reinvention, it's innovation. So take all the things that you have, whether it looks like it's related or not, it probably is a big reason why you are who you are. And, you know, like you said, like we may have 30 years left. We may have 5. And I hate to say this, you know, they're like, oh, Jackie's bringing us down. But, but let's just say you have 5. Are you really going to just show up and go through the motions for those 5 years? You know, we're so fixated on having a lot of time left that what if we didn't? And I still think even more so that we need to go for what it is that we want. So I love that you're an example. Yes, you went through the schooling. Yes, you have a private practice, but yes, you also diversify with the other things that you do, because I think that we're all so multi-passionate. And we need different areas in our lives to fulfill, whether it's our professional goals or our personal goals. But we're bombarded all the time with messages that are like, find one thing and do it better than anybody else. Like, and I don't think we're living in that world anymore.
I don't think either. I think we have the option of not living in that world. I recommend that people look back at the happiest points in their lives. And sometimes it's high school, or it's middle school, or maybe it's college, or wherever it was. When would you say you were happiest? And what were you doing? What did life look like? So I was really happy in high school. I was really happy. I was on student council. I was a cheerleader. I was on the track team, and I had a part-time job at McDonald's, and I had to make some grades. Yeah. So I realized I like to have multiple silos. That makes me happy. It drives me crazy, but in a happy way. But if you look back and you were happiest in college, where the only thing you did was study, that's what you enjoyed. So be that type of person, because not everybody loves to juggle. Not everybody. And I think that's one of the silver linings of this quarantine, which is, of course, got its horrors, but people are able to stop and pause. We push the pause button on life for a while. What do you miss? What do you enjoy? I realized I was so tired of driving. I would have clients, sometimes doing phone clients in the car, in the parking lot. I'd get to the parking lot an hour early before my daughter's bus would get there, just to have the client. Or I'm making my computer a hotspot because I've got research to do. I was always somewhere driving. And with the beauty of virtual, I'm able to be in one place. At one point, I was spending, it's ridiculous, $600 I spent 1 month in gas.
Wow. Because
I was all over between my kids and my work and my workouts, which I'm dedicated to, all that stuff. That's ridiculous. But it is recognizing what works for you. So some people thrive in one lane. Some people die in just one lane. What makes you happiest? And don't just settle for comfortable. Settle for thrilled to get up at night and jump back and do some more. Because, everybody's in bed and it's a good quiet time and I should go to sleep. Yeah, but you know what? I really want to write 3 more pages. I really want to paint that section of my painting. I believe in hobbies, in being passionate about something in life. And so maybe you can't change your career right now, but you can pick up painting or drawing or ceramics or reading because it makes you interesting. And if you are interesting to yourself, other people are going to find you interesting. And then you have more reasons to connect and engage. And that uplifts and empowers everybody.
Okay, I love that. I think it's worth repeating. If you are interesting to yourself, you are interesting to other people. But that's not where it stops, because many people will be like, I don't care if I'm interesting to other people. But when you are interesting to other people, you have more opportunity to connect.
Correct.
That really is the sweet spot. And so I think that in some ways, like you're saying, people are connecting with others more so because instead of saying like, oh, we can't get together for that drink that we've been trying to for a year, we'll just say, oh, let's get on a Zoom call and we'll have a drink. And, an hour later, you have that connection and that feeling from it. It's not the same as being in the same space, but I do see people who are really making efforts. So do you find at this time that, especially your clients who are women over 40, is there a lot of transition? Are people just kind of looking at their lives and wondering if they should continue the way they've been continuing? What do you see? Any trends or any common themes throughout therapy?
Well, think about it. When people come to me, it's because they want to make change. Because if you want to stay the same, I'm not the person for you.
Right.
I'm here for change because you want something different for yourself and you're willing to work for it. Because those are 2 important questions. People can want something different, but not be willing to work for it. I really don't have time for people like that, for clients like that. I have a very small client base because I'm very selective too. So with those people who want to make change, it is that they want to stop being miserable. or they know there's more out of life that they have yet to tap into. So I help to be that bridge on how to tap into it. But that's where understanding who each person is. What is your life like? What has it been? And where do you want it to be? And these are all questions listeners can ask themselves. Let me assess what my life is. And I think of us women, particularly women who have lived a bit, we have lives that are kind of like a pizza pie, you know, the different slices. And each slice isn't necessarily the same size. It shouldn't be. So my slice of life of being a mother is huge. It's very important to me. I thought by now I wouldn't have to mother so much, but like, when is this out?
There are women everywhere co-signing that statement right now.
I mean, thank God I love my children and like them. That's the quarantine. I mean, we're not in quarantine, but the stay safer at home thing. It's important to put the work in as a mother because you want to like your children. I mean, you love anything that calls you mom. I mean, you love them, but do you like them? Are you enjoying being around your children? And if you are not, then you have work to do. And regardless of the age of your children, you can always enjoy them. Get some help if you are not enjoying your children. There's the motherhood slice. Yes. There's the professional slice. How big is that? Now, for some women, that slice is bigger than the mothering slice.
Right.
You know, that's your choice.
Well, and the slices change sizes as we go.
Right. Right.
You know, 5 years from now, my mothering slice won't be all that big.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
I think. Well, yeah. Watch, I'm going to play this back in 5 years and be like, you were so stupid.
But it keeps us going because that's part of our job, right? To help raise independent, autonomous human beings who make this world a better place.
Right.
That's our job. That's our job. And some of us take longer than others in our investment in that.
Very true. So we have all of these different slices, hobbies, and being creative, I think falls sometimes under hobbies if it doesn't professionally. So how do you manage all of these slices now? Or where do you see the challenges with your clients and even just people around? Because I know with your podcast, you also meet a lot of different women. Mm-hmm. What do you see as the common challenge with the slices these days?
The common challenge is believing we can do it all, but not necessarily at the same time. So that's where recognizing the size of the slices, right? Because not each slice is the same proportionately. And I put health and wellness in there. I put spirituality and whatever source of connection you have with the higher power or God, and your interpersonal relationship with a significant other, the professional career, and then parenting, if that's what you do. Some people parent four-legged creatures instead of two-legged ones. All of those things. And I think one of the common, I don't want to say weaknesses, I think that we don't recognize enough who we are as people and accept our flaws and our strengths, and then maximize our strengths and minimize our weaknesses, and using the strengths to compensate for the weaknesses. I'm a procrastinator. I've always been a procrastinator. I have beaten myself up tremendously for being a procrastinator, but now 40 plus, I'm like, Michele, you're a procrastinator. We understand that. So let's work with it. Okay, I'm going to sit here and chillax a little while longer, and then I'm going to stay up until 3 a.m. But that's okay because I'm chillaxing and I'm enjoying it. I'm being with my kids or I'm with my girlfriends, but I got this deadline that's tomorrow. So I'm going to power through, and I'm not going to be mad when I'm not asleep. I'm going to be okay with myself because this is my choice. And I recommend that you make choices with your eyes wide open. That's a weakness that people have and that they can stop easily. Stop just, quote unquote, finding yourself in this predicament. You did not find yourself in this predicament, ladies. You walked into it.
Wait, you got to repeat that one. You did not find yourself in this predicament.
You walked into it. You walked into it. If you're 7, yeah, you find yourself in a predicament because you don't have a frontal lobe to like guide yourself. But we get ourselves into situations, recognize we walked into it. So if you had the power to walk yourself into it, guess what? You have the power to walk yourself out of it. Eyes wide open. Recognize what you've done. Stop punishing yourself for it. Start digging yourself out of it.
Right. There are two things I want to touch upon in regards to that. Number one, the judgment, I think, is worse than the actual behavior. So you talk about your procrastination or whatever it is, we all have attached a negative behavior to it, right? Mm-hmm. So plenty of procrastinators are extremely successful. Mm-hmm. It's when we start beating ourselves up for our behavior that there's a downward spiral.
Right.
Is that true?
That's true. Because think about it. You are punishing and berating and giving negative self-talk to yourself, which is detracting from your positive ability to function. So if I say, oh, you're such an idiot. Why did you wait? Why did you watch one more episode when you could have started on this journal article that you have to write? Imagine that conversation. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're in this situation again. Why did you do this? You know you hate when you feel like this. Listen to that versus, that was such a great episode. Did you see when he took his shirt off? Oh my gosh.
Oh, I saw that episode.
Okay. And then you're like, okay, that's fuel. Listen, Michele, you did that. Come on now, power through. Let's go. We did that. We had fun. Let's go. Let's do this. The other thing about procrastinators that I will say is that what I realize on this side of not beating myself up about it, well, I still a little bit, but I'll start on something. So I'll read through to see what is the expectation, what I need to do. And I truly believe that my mind is working on it. Mm-hmm. It's working on it. It's working on it. I know I have this thing to do. And I was like, okay, well, you could do a little bit every day for the next 2 weeks, and then you'll be done. So come on, let's break it down into an hour a day, and then you'll be, in 2 weeks. And Jackie, have I done that?
Of course not.
Of course not. But in some of the other things that I'm doing, I'm filtering, I'm working. I highly recommend that people leave a pad of paper and a pen beside their bed. Because when you've relaxed with everything, let everything go, and maybe you're in the middle of the night trying to sleep, and then bam, you get this really amazing thought. You're thinking, oh, that would be really good with this. Well, you either dismiss it and go back to sleep and roll over, or you ruminate about it, which interrupts your sleep, or ding, 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 I recommend you just roll over, you jot it down, don't turn the lights on, just jot it down on your pad of paper, and then it's there, and then you can relax and go back to sleep. We are thinking, our brains are amazing, amazing creations, and they are working even when we're not realizing it. Don't let it go. Don't keep it in your head, because that causes you to just ruminate, and that's not positive. But get it out, write it down, put it in your phone. I don't recommend you doing that in the phone when you're supposed to be sleeping, because once you pick up that phone, that's just a slippery slope.
Right.
But to jot those things down.
Yeah, I've done that before too, and in the dark, and then the next day I'm trying to read it, and I'm like, what does that say? Smush, garden, mouth, sensitive. Like, I'm like, those are just random words. What was I thinking?
Yeah, but they'll jog your memory, because at least you're like, okay, what is that? And it'll come. Yeah. You release it and it'll come. I know I used to worry that I was developing Alzheimer's, because once you get 40 plus, you're like, oh my goodness, that word is not coming. Oh my goodness, what's my family history of Alzheimer's? Am I going to get Alzheimer's? And then the more you worry about not being able to retrieve words or remember something, of course you're not going to remember it. Of course you're not going to be able to articulate. Relax. Let your brain go. Relax. It'll come to you. Relax.
Yeah. Relax. If you get nothing else from this episode, relax, girl. Just relax. Right. So, but the second part of what you had said, though, is if you walk yourself into it, you can walk yourself out of it. That sounds extremely powerful and amazing. How do we do that?
Problem solving. There's a technique. First step, brainstorm. What are all the possibilities? No possibility is too ridiculous. It's like Disney's Blue Sky. Anything is possible. So you start with that step. Okay, what are the possibilities? Not how likely it is that it could happen, but just what could happen to solve this situation. and you write all of those down or think about them. And then you start assigning how likely is that? What are the positives and what are the negatives if I take that option? What if I take that option? What if I take that option? Positives and negatives. And then rank order. Which is the best solution for me given my circumstances? And then you pick it. You pick the best solution. And then you evaluate how well did it work? Did it work well? Okay, great. If it didn't, why not? If it didn't work, then you go to the next viable possible solution. I think we as women surrender our professional minds when we walk through the door of our houses. We are great problem solvers at work. We are solution oriented. We are powerful. We are confident. We are competent. And then we get home and you hear it in stereo. Mommy, can I? I'm exhausted. You don't want it. And then the disappointment. I tell my girls, I have 2 daughters. I'm like, oh my gosh, the disappointment in stereo, it's just more than I want to hear. The nagging and the, mom, you make everything miserable. That's not all that I get. That's just when I say no. But you don't get that at work. You don't get people treating you that way. So take your work mindset to your home problems. Because if you had 2 subordinates who are complaining in not respectful ways, you would have to sit down and talk with them. Okay, this is not okay. This is the way we're going to work with each other. If you have a problem, this is the way you're going to express it. We have a suggestion box. Not really. But you know what I'm saying? Use those skills that you have in other places in your life and apply them to where things aren't working so well.
Yeah. I think a lot of women, like we take off our bra when we get home and we take off our problem solving skills. Like we hang them both up, we drape them both over the treadmill and call it a day. Right. So I think that there's a lot there. I love your problem solving idea as far as like your brainstorming and stuff. And I notice that too with the clients that I work with. Whenever I say brainstorm some solutions or some scenarios, regularly I get people crossing stuff off or not even giving themselves the chance to go there because they're thinking about how. And so I like that you're brainstorming like all types of scenarios. Right. And then you can figure out how after. Right. But we're so focused on the how these days. Like, I couldn't possibly do that. How would I do that? Like how many women, all right, if you're listening right now and you have been on a job interview and the job requires travel or the job requires something that is not already happening in your life, how many of us talk ourselves out of the job before we even have all the pieces? Right. That's what we do all the time because like, how would I actually be able to juggle it all? I better not even try. So forget the how. That's my number one tip. Again, not a therapist, but we're so wrapped up in how we're going to pull things off that we don't allow ourselves the freedom to be creative about what we actually want.
Very good. I think there's a theme among us women, it's fear of success. It's really not the fear of failure. It's the fear of success. How would my plate is already so full. If I got that job, how would I manage everything? I don't know. I don't think I can do it. Or I don't have enough expertise in that area that they might expect so much from me. Well, heck, it's all right. That's what's called learning on the fly. It's called community college online. Whatever it is, you can do it. Don't self-eliminate.
Yes. Self-eliminate. I've never heard it put that way. And I love it. I had to let that sink in for a second because that's what we do. It's like, I would like to be a world-class speaker and travel the world and do all this stuff. And then someone's like, would you like to speak at this event? And they're like, I couldn't possibly get childcare.
Right. I mean, heck, let me tell you, there've been many meetings that I have my kids sitting in the corner and with all kinds of electronic devices and like, okay, you have to be quiet. Yeah. For the next hour. And if you do, we'll go to Chick-fil-A. Yay!
I remember being in the Costco parking lot. This was probably, 8 to 10 years ago. And I was on a work call. I was consulting and, you try to schedule it so you're in a place where you're not driving. You don't want to drop the call, the whole thing. Right. And I just remember going over to the Costco food court there and just getting those big ass slices of pizza and be like, here you go. And probably bribing them with something, the ice cream or whatever it is. Yeah.
Sunday.
If you just let me have this call. And, you know, they did great. And it's funny, even when I would pick up at school, when I was doing that, my kids tend to look in the passenger side window as I pull up to see if I'm on a call.
Okay.
You know, because then they know that they just need to sneak in, close the door, and then we send on our way, because that's the life we live in.
Yes.
We're multi-passionate, where we've got multiple streams of income and different things happening, and we're just juggling it all. So speaking of juggling it all, you have a robust career, family life, all of it. You work in your community as well. And then you're thinking like, oh, you know what I should do? I should launch a podcast. Take us down that path? How did that happen? Because I'm all about launching podcasts, but at the same time, you had a pretty full life.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think it goes back to that stopping being fearful of success, right? Because if we cannot see it with our human eye, we think it's not possible. But we have to think not with our eyes, but with the sense of purpose and what we want to contribute to this earth. Because going back to what you said earlier, Jackie, I'm saying, okay, we have another 40 years, and you're saying, 5. Okay. So if we have less time, and what I do tend to say is that how many healthy years do you have?
Yes.
Because that's different than the how many years do you have breathing on this planet.
Yes.
It is how many healthy years that you have. So knowing that, we as women who have wisdom and life experience and have things to contribute, we need to say yes much more than we are saying no. Stop saying no. Stop leading with no, right? And the mindset is, and I encourage this with my clients, it's just like, don't focus on what you can't do. Focus on what you can do. And that has never been more important than in this pandemic, when initially people were thinking, oh, I can't go to my office. I can't send my kid to school. I can't go to the grocery store and find produce. All these can'ts. Okay, that's easy. Stop focusing on what you can't do. Focus instead on what you can do. Well, I can start to use what's in my pantry. I can start pulling out some books that I wanted to read to my kid. I can make calls and learn this new thing called Zoom. In that first 2 weeks, I was like, oh my gosh. You know, when it was supposed to be, quote, 2 weeks, I was like, oh my gosh, what can I do? I can't get to my UCLA office. I can't do my research. I can't see my clients in person. I can't. So I needed to regroup, recenter. And that's what we always need to do in times of stress and turmoil, is recenter. What is going to center and focus me? And so what I was thinking was, what can I do that I have not been able to do? I love to paint, but I hadn't been able to paint in a long time. And so I said, I can. I have paints in my attic. I have canvases. So I started painting. And I have this painting that I call Corona, because it's to remind me back when we're out of this pandemic that this is what came of it, and to remind us of how far we've come through this. So all these passion projects, we have time, because also I rededicated myself to fitness, but I changed it in a way that I said, okay, including the drive time and the parking and picking out my spot in the class, and then the drive time back. Oh, and don't forget the coordination of outfits. Put all to go to the gym. Put all that time together, and then still use that in my working out at home. So I have this great app that I work out with, and it's wonderful, but it also recenters me. It centers me to dedicate myself to health and fitness. In the 40 plus, I was a chunky kid. I was chunky in and out of adulthood. And it was something that I wanted to be healthy. My parents died relatively young, and I wanted to maximize my health. What can you do? I can't get to the gym, which I actually loved going to the gym. It's a whole culture and the people and all that stuff.
Yes.
But what I can do is use this app and project it on my big TV. So the can-do attitude versus the can't. As far as the podcast came about, the She Built It podcast with Melanie and Dr. Michele, I'd wanted to have a vehicle for being able to reach people beyond one-to-one. And so one-to-one is, of course, being a psychologist, being a therapist. I've published nearly 50 journal articles and book chapters and therapist manuals. But if you actually look at the numbers of people who read them, it's international, but it's still not that many people, right? So what does that leave you with? Media options, television, radio, podcasting. That's something I don't have to wait for Oprah to tap me and say, oh, here's your new show, Dr. Michele. No, it's a DIY. You can do it. And it's incredible. I find it enriching in my life to learn from these women. And that's what I talk about, the zigzag kind of journey rather than the linear one, to enrich and change and pivot and leap in their own lives.
Right. Are there any common themes with the women that you talk to as far as how they found success?
Recognizing that fear is part of the process, that being fearful and taking risks is just part of it. It's not something to be avoided. It is something to acknowledge and do despite of, because there's no difference between someone who's extremely successful and someone who sees themselves as unfulfilled. It's just the effort. They push past it. Everybody needs courage. Courage is because you were fearful and you did it anyway.
Right.
Right? So
it's not the absence.
It's not the absence. It's despite it.
Yeah. Yeah. I truly believe that conversations like this are really important because we're bombarded with, she's fearless. Mm-hmm. And I've done this. One of my signature talks at live events, remember live events? They're so fun. Is that fearlessness is BS.
Right.
Because we all think like, all right, so if I think of you as fearless, Dr. Michele, mm-hmm. then I can say, well, she's successful because she's fearless and I have fear. Mm-hmm. So I'll never be as successful. Mm-hmm. So that automatically gives me an out mm-hmm. to like not even try. But the other thing too is I believe it takes away all of the courage that you have mm-hmm. shown and all of the fear that you've probably felt mm-hmm. and continued working anyway. Why would I discredit you by calling you fearless? Nobody's fearless. In fact, if you are fearless, it's a diagnosis.
Right. No,
and I know that sounds flip, but I truly mean like, if you are truly fearless, there's a diagnosis for that. It's not, we are so filled with fear, mm-hmm. some of us more than others, but what are we going to do with it? What are we going to push through? You know, I think fear can be your friend.
And when I talked about procrastination being one of my weaknesses, I am diagnosably anxious. So I specialized in anxiety disorders in part because that's what I suffered with. And I didn't know that there were names for what I was dealing with as a kid and as an adolescent and then in college and in graduate school until graduate school. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a name for this? So social phobia, social anxiety disorder. We called it social phobia back then. And I just did stuff even though I would have pools of sweat underneath my armpits. And I remember being in high school, I asked my mom, can I go to the doctor? Because I think something's wrong with me. Because I would, I get so anxious to have to stand up and give a presentation or give a talk. I told you I was a cheerleader. Do you know I would be nauseous and massive headaches before every tryout. And my heart was beating on my chest. And I thought, oh my gosh, Michele, just quit. Just don't do it. Please don't make me do this. Please don't make me. And I'm like, I want to be a cheerleader. Michele, shush up and go put a smile on and run out there and do the cheer. And so I would have these battles with myself and profuse sweating, like it would mess up right around my forehead. You see me pointing, mess up my hair. And not until I was in graduate school did I understand. And then I could start saying, okay, these are techniques that can help. Exercise, meditation, self-talk that's positive, not berating myself. Ladies, if people could hear the way you talk to yourself, are you being kind? Are you being supportive? Would you talk to your children that way? And this is the way I try to help people understand, what are you saying to yourself? What are those conversations? So with those pools of sweat and the anxiety dripping, I would just tell myself, listen, I'll be proud of you if you do it anyway. I'll be proud of you. Just try, just do it anyway. And that's how I kind of could get myself out of it, to give positive, supportive messages. We all can do that.
the judgment, I'm telling you, that's the killer right there. Right. And then also, we don't have to be courageous for very long. When you were a cheerleader and you ran out there, once you were out there, you were fine, right?
Yeah. I was like, man, look at this crowd. This is the best.
So it's not about sticking to it, because that was easy.
Right.
It was about that initial leap.
Right. Anxiety is the anticipation of things going horribly wrong, right? It is in our mind, in our creativity, and our imaginations that we're like, oh my gosh, this could go wrong. If I go and I give this presentation in front of these people, they're going to ask me questions I don't know any answers to. That's what kept me so calm with doing your interview, because you just said, just come on, show up. Just show up on my show. And I'm like, well, I need to prepare, because I'm a consummate preparer. I really am, in terms of when I have things, I prepare, I over prepare. But with you, Jackie, I was like, man, she didn't give me any questions. I listened to some more episodes. I mean, I know your show. I've been listening to your show. I'm like, well, I know her format. It's lots of fun, and you just talk to a good friend. But I was like, man, so that kept me from getting anxious. I still get anxious. I have to give presentations. And so I also started meditating. I think we need downtime that we give ourselves to recognize we need to refill our fuel tanks in multiple ways.
Right.
And that's one way that really helps. It really helps to be more productive and more focused. And my older daughter said, Mom, you're different, because you would have been fussing about this. And that's when I had realized, I said, this stuff must be working, because the only different thing that I did, because I'm not going to fuss about it. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't because, I went and walked with Gandhi or anything. It was just that,
although that helps.
It would.
But I think, one of the things that I think is the misconception is that you need to have your little meditation corner with the pillow and the Buddha and the fountain and all of that, and then just sit there for 3.5 hours. But in reality, just sitting and breathing and listening to your breath and focused on where you are in that moment for just a few minutes is beneficial. The funny thing is, I believe that we as women like to poo-poo any idea that is actually that simple.
Right.
Like there's science. You're a woman of science. There is science to back meditation, even at 5 minutes a day.
Right.
And we're like, no, it can't be that easy. Yeah. Ladies, it's that easy. So do you feel like you have the opportunity to learn things and improve your own life through doing the podcast?
Oh, my goodness. Come on, Jackie.
Yeah, right?
It is like my own personal TED Talk that we then get to share around the world, because it's tailored to women. These are journeys. And you get to ride on it, and you get to pull from it. And we end each show with a tip for our listeners. What's one tip that you could leave with our listeners? And so I have learned and grown and tried new things, new approaches, and just eased off myself, I guess, so much pressure. And I think that's part of it. And listening to the guests on our show, it's like, man, they are just doing it. And maybe they're just leaping from something that they've been doing for 20 years, and they're trying something new and small, but they're passionate about it.
I love that. All of the things that you're doing are just making such an impact on the world. Now is the time to show up in big ways, in small ways. People always do that whole like go big or go home. Like, no, you don't have to go big. If that's not for you, just go tiny.
Right.
But just go. If there were a goddess of doing all the things, it would be you.
Oh.
So thank you for sharing all of that with us.
Thank you. My pleasure, Jackie. And thank you for doing what you do for women, for those who want to become podcasters, those who want to learn through this glorious mechanism that we have to share. There's so much to celebrate in this point in life that we have, and to continue celebrating. Don't stay where you are. I love how you say just small. We are living our best and only lives here on this planet.
Yes.
And it is what we make it. So make it better.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you, Dr. Michele.
Yes.
You're the best.
Thank you. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to head on over to ourkindra.com and use promo code 40thrive20, or just click the link here in the show notes. You'll be feeling more like yourself in no time. Until next time, take care and keep thriving. Spring has sprung, and with the change of seasons, sometimes comes an increase in vitality. If you're feeling in the mood for a little more personal time, may I suggest Coconut. Coconut is all about providing clean and natural ingredients when you're enjoying your most intimate moments, with or without a partner. Naturally safe products developed by people who are obsessed with quality. Get 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/coconut. That's 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/coconut.